Welcome into the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network, presented by Club Blue. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio, in a holly jolly edition of the Sources Say podcast, joined by Sean Smith. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Well, been better.
You look amazing. Like, if there's any consolation prize out of all of this, you look fantastic. And I think that makes up for like 86% of what we saw.
I'm feeling festive, that's for sure. We literally had our holiday party with our basketball team today, and as soon as that was over, I jumped in my car and came home for Christmas to visit my family. So I haven't had time to change. So I've got the hat. I have the Snoop on a Stoop pants on too, as well, at the bottom of this. So we had to wear Christmas attire to our party, and I had on 4 scouts on top of each other. Didn't really have much of an option. I just threw something on.
Well, you look the part. You look great. Kentucky did not look great. We are. It's been a weekend. It's been a really wild roller coaster ride. We should have Steven jump on and just talk all the specifics and basics of what the heck went on in New York City. Sean, last time you and I were there, we almost got stabbed leaving Madison Square Garden. The best story that Steven and I have leaving New York City was a homeless guy crapped himself while we were in the Five Below, and like they were going around spraying perfume everywhere trying to cover up the scent. So like, not getting stabbed by a homeless guy, but I feel like, the waft of feces is probably a close second. So the New York experience was fantastic. In all honesty, it really was, and it sounds crazy considering how we started that, but it was beautiful. It really was beautiful seeing the city at Christmas. I've never been up there. I've been up there a handful of times, 7, 8 times or so, dating back to when I was like 10 years old. I've been in New York over the years, and it is a really cool city, especially around the holidays. It was awesome to be up there with my people, BBN, going to Jack Dempsey's. It was really fun to pregame and get ready, seeing the Rockefeller Center, seeing, all the cool festive Christmassy things. And then the game tipped off. And that was an absolute train wreck from the opening tip. It was really interesting, Sean, the way they got the game started, considering how much was put into this game. I mean, I remember the first Club Blue event that we had with Mark Pope, where there's kind of the introduction with the team, where he kind of did a meet and greet with the fan base and did a Q&A, and really that was his first kind of welcome to BBN moment with them, not the press conference, but with them. And I remember vividly him saying that the Ohio State game in New York City was the game that he had on his schedule that he was most looking forward to, the one that, when you're able to go up to New York City around the holidays and, do some team bonding things and things like that. He said that's super important for like championship identity teams to be able to build those, connections and relationships and, really grow as a unit, as a team. And then, you get to see them go to Hamilton. They do the, all the ice skating rink and all the cool stuff with New York City. And then the way the game started and just how lethargic they were, and it just didn't feel like there was a buy-in and the effort and, all the same mistakes that we've seen them get behind early on and dig some of these holes in some of these early higher profile games. They did the same exact thing, except this time Ohio State, to their credit, just came in and they kind of threw the first punch, and then when Kentucky tried throwing the second one back, threw a stronger one, and then a stronger one, and the stronger one, and they kind of backed Kentucky up against the wall, and it got to the point where it was like, yep, just not our night, just not something we're able to overcome. Just really disappointed in the will to, the want to, especially knowing that was the game they had circled on their calendar. I just didn't think that the effort was where it needed to be. The execution certainly wasn't where it needed to be. So many different flaws with shooting and defense, and we're going to get into all that. But I left New York City extremely disappointed, Sean, and I'm sure you were after watching it upon review.
Yeah, unfortunately, the homeless man wasn't the only one to crap themselves, because Kentucky did
as
well. And it's one of those things we talked about it going into the game, right? Like after Louisville, we talked about the week layoff going into this. You got the holiday that follows it, going home for the holidays, and then and kind of just that game that it felt like maybe a trap game, but also the fact that Ohio State needed that win for its resume. And I know they now have 2 quad one wins because that Texas win that they got early in the season's a Q1, but this one's the big one, right? That they get. They get this one against number 4 Kentucky, a team that had kind of been one of the hot topics in non-conference play around college basketball, climbing all the way to number 4 in the AP poll, now down to 10. But it had this weird feel to it all week that it was going to be one of those games that maybe they slugged their way through it, but I didn't expect the margin to be what it was if Kentucky did lose the game. Didn't shoot it well from 3. If they hadn't have been good at the free throw line, they probably lose this thing by 30 plus.
Which sounds just
think 27 to 32 from the free throw line, but only scoring 65. And I didn't get to watch it live because we were playing, but obviously I was seeing our group chat. And I was like, man, this ain't going well.
Steven was on one, buddy. Man, when Kentucky gets down, you can guarantee one thing, and that Steven is gonna be fired up.
Yeah, I think the first one I read when I stepped out in the hallway from the tunnel was maybe we're not that good. And I was like, man, things can't be going well right now. And then by the end of the game, I saw it and I was like, oh no, man, this one's not going to be good to watch. But it's we did our preseason predictions, right? And I had 2 non-conference losses at this point. And it was Clemson and Gonzaga. It wasn't this one. So the resume looks different because Gonzaga obviously is a better win than Ohio State. But the way we got here, it kind of elevates the expectations within this fan base. Remember, we went into the season not really knowing what to expect from this team, but when you beat Duke and you beat Gonzaga, you immediately elevate yourself to you can win a national championship, get to a Final Four. This team can still make those runs, but what it does is it sets you up for these really high highs, and then when you lose this one, you lose at Clemson, the lows come. So is it really – are you as good as beating Duke or Gonzaga, or are you as bad as maybe losing the way that you have to Ohio State? It's probably neither. It's probably somewhere in the middle that I think that this team is actually number 10 in the AP poll is probably where they actually are.
I agree.
And the wins that they got early elevated them above maybe to the point that this is what we was talking about a few weeks ago. When you beat Duke, it changes the whole vibe. That when you do lose, maybe some of those expectations of where you were are really not what you are at this point. But Kentucky, to me, is still a top 10, top 15 team. It's just they have some flaws, and now they're going into a league, and I was hoping they would only go into that league with 1 loss because there are going to be losses that kind of pile up for everyone in the league. And that's probably the unfortunate part about losing this one is you're like, dang, and losing it by the margin that they did is probably the more disappointing thing. If this has been a possession or 2 game, live with a little bit easier. It's hard to stomach losing the way that they did, though, and playing the way they did. And the continued struggles shooting the 3 ball is something I didn't see happening, and I've dismissed it for a while. Starting to get a little concerned because it's carrying over.
There you go. Hey. Corey Price, shout out Sean with the King of the Bluegrass 3rd place finish.
And we shot it well. We shot 71.7% yesterday from the floor, which is a KOB record that hadn't been broken for 37 years. It's 13 of 17 from 3.
I think there's a certain staff that could use your expertise right now. I have this weird, I don't know, sense of, I don't know if relief is the right word, but if you're going to lose the way Kentucky did in an all systems failure in a, all right, there you go. There's the punch in the mouth. There is your, come to Jesus moment. There's your rock bottom. If you're going to experience that, I think it needed to be right now. It needed to be on the heels of what we had seen the last couple of weeks with this team, where we've seen a clear regression. Since Western Kentucky, this team, we talked about how Western kind of threw the blueprint out there on how to kind of slow down this team and force, ugly, not just give them a million wide open looks from 3 and, show that they don't really respond to physicality as well as maybe you'd hope. And that was the game where it was like, okay, maybe this is how you beat this team, or at least challenge them. And since then, we've kind of seen this regression where, Louisville, they shot extremely well and from an efficiency perspective, but the volume has dipped. Mark Pope has been just pissed. I mean, every time he's talked, he said the volume. I mean, we're in the low 20s, and that's just not what we are. That's not our identity. That's not acceptable. It showed the blueprint to at least how to challenge this group. And since then, we've really seen them exposed in a number of ways. And I think the biggest struggle that I've had with this group, and I talked about it on the Rapid Reaction and radio and a couple different platforms since the loss, but this team has been living in this danger zone, digging their own grave and just seeing how much dirt they could pour on top of themselves before they'd miraculously jump out and go, ta-da, not dead yet. And it's cute and it's fun and it's exciting, and the miracles are just, oh my gosh, I can't believe we just got to experience that. But playing that style and having that approach was going to get them burnt eventually. Their miracles are miracles for a reason. They are coming down from the heavens from God himself and guiding a path to a victory. Those things happen once in a long time. Like, it's not one of those things that happen every single game. And the issue that this team had, and I still haven't found the right word. It's not entitlement, but this team, I think, maybe complacency. This team got to a point where I think they exceeded early expectations. They got to the point where they rise to number 4 in the rankings, consensus number 4 team in the country. You get your statement win against Duke. You get your statement win against Gonzaga. Respond well in the second half against Clemson is the only misstep of the season. All those things, and you go, we've earned something. Like, we're there. We're ready, baby. Like, we got this thing. And when you dig those holes and you expect to crawl out of them every single time, but you also expect the other team to just roll over and die, and you don't anticipate the response back. You don't expect the punches thrown back with them making shots or getting defensive stops. You live in this kind of live on the edge of danger, not being afraid to fall. And when you fall, you go, oh, shoot, I'm dead. That's what we got to see in New York City. And Ohio State is okay. I think, it's going to stick as a quad 1 win. That 20-point loss would be 40 if they play with that same approach against Auburn or Alabama or Tennessee, or go down the list of these high-profile SEC programs. If you're going to lay an egg the way Kentucky did in New York City, it needed to come right now ahead of a 10-day break until Brown, 14-day break until SEC's play begins against Florida, to regroup, hit reset with themselves and say, this way is not working. We need to get back to the drawing board and figure out what our approach is to start these games, because you can't keep digging these 18-point holes, these early 10-point halftime deficits. You can't live in that territory and expect to miraculously find your way out, because teams are good. This is a really, really tough schedule. Ohio State's a really good team. They underperformed to start the year, and now they're kind of trending back to what they should be. Ohio State's a well-coached team. They're talented, and we got beat. There are things to be concerned about, but I think listening to Mark Pope tonight during his call-in radio show, how he responded, and there's real frustration. There's real, he's really pissed off about how his team played, and they should. It was a really, really embarrassing effort, and I think he knows that. He said that, and I like that they're kind of where they need to be mentally as we go into this break and then going into SEC play, Sean.
Yeah, but both losses are different, right? Like they both show up on the quad 1 side of things. And Kentucky's now, 2 quad 1 wins, 2 quad 1 losses. But Clemson felt different because they had a chance down the stretch to compete and win the game against Clemson. But when you go back and you watch the tape of Ohio State, they had no business even having a chance to even win the game. And eventually they played their way out of having a chance to win the game versus Ohio State. So when you look at the resume on paper, I wouldn't change it. Like, right, the 2 wins that they got, Gonzaga, Duke, you take those 2. You don't flip anything, because my preseason predictions, I had them losing the 2 Gonzaga, Clemson, but I had them beating Duke, Ohio State. The resume as it looks is actually better when it comes to the wins that they have. So this is going to remain a quad one loss. I don't think that it's going to dip to a point to where it's not a quad one. So overall, like, your resume doesn't take a massive hit by losing it. But when you look at Auburn, the way that they beat Ohio State, and you look at these other teams, the way that they've beaten this team. I mean, Ohio State's been blown out a couple of times this season. That's the part that you look at and go, ugh, like, what you got to bring and what you got to do to compete going into the league play here in a few weeks. Kentucky just didn't have it on Saturday. It can't have those moments in SEC play, or guess what happens, Jack? We were talking about how many weeks can you go 2-0. You play like that in league play, you'll lose 3 or 4 in a row if you can't get out of the funk. By a lot.
You
will.
That approach and effort and mentality and just kind of the lethargic kind of start, that's going to get you 40 piece. Like, Auburn would beat this Kentucky team the way it played on Saturday by 40 points. And that's not an exaggeration. I mean, that is it's a sobering reality, and it's a big old fat reality check smack in the face, but they needed it. They needed it at that point in the season.
And took a major drop in the net down to, is it 19 now that they're at in the net? I think it was 9th, and now I know they dropped. I won't think they dropped 8 and then dropped 2 more spots. So
they are down to 19 in the net.
26 in Ken Palm.
And then Ken Palm was another pretty serious, down to 26. Yeah.
Defense is 62, I think. Offense is still in the top 10. So, like, the defensive number it's taken a hit since prior to the Louisville game. It dropped. It drops again. When you give up the number of points you did to Ohio State, you're going to drop significantly. In Ken Palm, you're getting to that point in the year where, last season's kind of cycling out, and it's now becoming kind of who you are. That's a formula that's got to get closer to what it was when we were talking 2 weeks ago on the show, not what it looks like now. You can't be one-sided. And the offensive efficiency, they're going to be one of the better teams in college basketball offensively if they get back to hitting and shooting a better percentage from 3 like they were early in the year. That number, I don't know. I mean, obviously 10th is where you are. I don't know how high they can climb overall, but you'd feel a lot better for where they are on that end of the floor as well if they start getting to that 3-point number. And I've not done the math for what they are over the last 6 or 7 games from 3, but it's not what I thought they would be. Like, I thought they had consistency at that spot and at those positions and at that area of the floor where they would shoot it well. They would have their nights where maybe they didn't, but I thought the volume would end up carrying them to a certain percentage, certain number of made 10, 11, 12 made threes a game. Making 4 for this team, man, that's tough to overcome. And they did get to the free throw line. If you're not going to be a really good 3-point shooting team, Kentucky's not an athletic team outside of a couple of spots. They don't force turnovers. They also don't turn the ball over at a high rate. So they're not throwing away possessions. If they're not going to shoot the ball well, Jack, then they've got to be able to rebound and get and win the glass. Like, that's another area that you have to be really good in. But I think for this team to advance and get where it wants to go, and it's still such a long ways away. I don't want to overreact to one game. Because it's one game. Let's see how they bounce back in SEC play, not in the next game. I want to see how they bounce back when league play starts. But right now, if I think this team is going to make a run, one, they got to shoot it well, and I think they got to rebound well. They're not. This isn't a team that's going to just miraculously start turning you over and getting out and getting easy baskets and transition and things. I think it's going to come down to some other areas. But going and only making 4 threes, there's better shooters on this roster that they can't have games like that. And if they do, they better be locked in defensively. But, you put the stats up there, like Otega Owe, 21, 13 from the free throw line. You can't really say much about Otega. There are some guys. I still think Lamont's their most important piece, and I think that's evident every single time he has to come out of the game. But, hey, it's one game. I'm not going to overreact, but there are things to be concerned about. But also maybe trust that Mark Pope and the staff will get it fixed going into league play. They know what lies ahead.
Talking about the shooting, Mark Pope talked about it tonight during his call-in show, was asked about, like, hey, are you concerned about the numbers? And if you go down the list, you brought up those shooting numbers. Going back to Western Kentucky, 27.6, 26.9, 25.9, 28.0, 32.3, 52.4 against Louisville, and then 18.2%. So outside of the Louisville game, and again, that was the lowest volume of the entire season with 21 attempts, and Mark Pope was pretty frustrated after the game talking about the Louisville game, saying, yeah, the efficiency is great, but again, 6 of those 11 makes came from one player, Lamont Butler, and those were wide open, either catch and shoot looks or, lost a defender, whatever. Those are the shots he should be making in those circumstances. But outside of that, not a lot of open looks created with only 21 attempts. Pope talked about it tonight, about like, hey, are you concerned about the efficiency, or is that something that you think is trending in the wrong direction? He said, I'm just concerned about the volume. We're in the mid to low 20s. It's not what we're supposed to be. Most of that is creating for each other. A whole bunch of not selfish, but hero ball, relying on myself to kind of put the weight on the world on my shoulders to do it for my teammates, instead of me making a play for him, who will then make it a play for him. Like that was something that has been lost over the last couple of weeks that, Mark Pope's really been outspoken about. I was most disappointed with the Ohio State performance offensively, in the sense that they were giving us opportunities to earn. We could have earned 20 more threes in that game. We didn't, for a number of reasons. The biggest thing is volume. Volume of three-point attempts is the marker for us. It's a place where we have to make progress, and we will. You'll see as we go throughout the season and continue to get it better and better. So, pretty specific, blunt comments there from Pope.
And when you're talking about if volume is your identity, right? And if volume from three is your identity, and you want to get to that number, let's just say 30 or 30, 31, 32 attempted threes, and you're only settling for 22 a game. If that's who you are and that's your identity as a team, and that's what you've instilled in your program, then your rhythm is off if you're not getting to that number. It's your rhythm offensively in a lot of areas if you're not attempting that number. So whatever the case is to why they're not getting there, if it's not being able to get downhill and touch the paint and attack, and that's where I'm coming from when Lamont Butler's not in the game. Like, Lamont and Ortega are the best at getting in the lane and creating opportunities and getting those power plays that you and I talked about in the offseason that now Mark Pope continues to talk about.
5 of 23, I believe.
Yeah, so that's and whether that be passes aren't on time or on target, or maybe the ball's not being delivered where it needs to go, and whatever the breakdowns are that they use for those power plays. Obviously, I'd have to watch the film and dive into just that section of it a little more, but whatever it is, they obviously had opportunities. They just didn't convert on it. And having a high success rate in those areas of the game where they break it down into chunks, Jack, is where Mark Pope has a lot of this program, and a lot of his team's success is built on power plays and putting the ball on time and on target, but also making shots out of those. So I'm sure they've broken down all those plays and shown it, whether it's a missed shot, whether the ball's not delivered properly, whether it's not the right or the correct read, the timing's off. That's where I'm coming back to the rhythm. If volume is what he's preaching and what he gets to, there's a reason he keeps talking about it. Every time they fall short and shoot in the low 20s in those attempts, and they're 4 of 22, he's still wanting them to shoot that number of 34 to 35. And to me, it's more rhythm than it is anything else. That's the flow that Kentucky and the identity that they've established. It's not reflecting it on box scores, though, and on team comparison when you look at these games. They're not getting to that number. And evidently, that's something that Mark Pope believes that is the key to them getting to be who they want to be. Now, they've won games where they didn't get to that number, but they attempted, if I'm not mistaken, 2 more shots than Ohio State and lost by 20. Like the shot.
4 more. 57 attempts to 53.
57 to 53, and you lose by 20. And
7 more 3-point attempts.
And you got to
5 more free throw attempts.
Yeah. And you lose by, didn't turn it over a ton. You turned it over 10 times to their 7. Fast break points, if I'm not mistaken, were 7-4 in your favor. Like, there are areas when you look at the box score, you're like, man, Kentucky won, or offensive rebounds. Kentucky won that category. Now,
well, shoot, giving up 4 3-pointers for a team that was coming in shooting 41% from 3 on the year, and not a super high volume team, but one of the most efficient teams in college basketball. Junie Mobley, second in college basketball in 3-point efficiency. Like, if you were to tell me going in that we would hold them 4 of 15 from three, like I would say that would be a pretty, handily victory. I mean, if just on paper.
Obviously, they didn't defend, pick and roll, ball screen action very well. And that's another area defensively.
Pope specifically said, so the power plays 523 was a thing he talked about a number of times during his call-in show tonight. And then he gave up, he said Kentucky gave up 15 points on rejects of high ball screens. He mentioned that stat like 3 or 4 times. So clearly those were the two glaring takeaways for him leaving after watching film.
Yeah, and I mean that's an important area of what you're wanting to do in your game plan. So if you're struggling to do it, credit to Ohio State for having success in that area of the game. Maybe that's something that they picked up on film and decided to attack ball screens that way by rejecting them. But overall, like Kentucky just needs to take care of Kentucky. This is one game. You've got film. I'm sure they've been in the film room. They've addressed whatever the issues are. You've got a layoff here to kind of get in the gym after the holiday, get some practices together, work on areas that you've struggled on. But one more non-conference game before you get into league play, and this team's 10-2 with a chance to get to 11-2. Now, ideally, it would have been 12-1 at this point. 11-2 going into conference play it's a good spot to be in. You've still got 2 of the better wins in college basketball, but you do have flaws. You've not been playing your best basketball. And you mentioned a moment ago, the 3-point shooting against Louisville was all one guy, like for the most part. Finding that balance from behind the arc, I think, is a critical thing for this team to have success in the league, but also in the NCAA tournament when they get to that portion of the season. It can all come from one guy. We've seen Kobe Brea have big nights where other guys haven't shot it well from 3. They have to find that balance, Jack, to me, across the roster to where it's not all leaning on one guy. From not from a scoring standpoint, but just from a making shot standpoint. I don't think that you can go into this league to where you're only getting one guy, knocking down threes for you, especially if Mark Pope's wanting that volume that he's asking for. If guys are missing shots, then maybe just shooting 35 is probably not going to work out the way you want it to. But I think Pope's belief is more, this is who we are. We're best when we play this way. Our rhythm is good when we're playing this way, and we're in sync with what we want to do, and that is their identity. Falling short of that by a margin of 10 to 12, 13 shot attempts from 3, that is not being who you are. And if Pope believes that's who they are, then they might need to start getting to that number, because then the rhythm is established. So to me, if that's their identity, they're not meeting it, Jack. And it's that may be playing more into this than anything.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. And one of the fans said, talk about layup number 7 of 23 on layups, 0.97 points per possession. I mean, just not a whole lot to love offensively from anybody. 29.8% shooting overall, 18.2% from 3. I mean,
that's the other thing, right? When you're shooting poorly from 3 and you're also shooting that number on layups or attempts at the rim, that's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, you had the good free throw line numbers, but still you lose by 20. Ohio State shot it well from the free throw line as well, if I'm not mistaken. But when you look at it, Gonzaga in the second half, they got some cuts and they scored, downhill and making some things. When you're kind of struggling in both areas, Jack, it's going to be a long night. So like that's where I'm coming from, that you can't be a disaster in both areas of the game. And I think we all agree this isn't the most athletic Kentucky team that's taken the floor outside of a couple of spots. So, finishing plays at the rim, meeting guys at the rim, not sure how much long-term success they're going to have there. That's why I think that the ability to shoot the ball well consistently from 3, it doesn't have to be 40%, but 33, 34, 35% does a lot for this team.
Absolutely. Club Blue does a lot for me. Club Blue is the official collective partner of the University of Kentucky. Club Blue was founded by UK fans strictly to support the NIL efforts at the University of Kentucky. Unlike most collectives, 100% of subscriber money and 100% of donor money goes directly to NIL. Club Blue charges no fees. Club Blue subscribers receive some amazing benefits like invitations to special events, meet and greets with UK athletes, signed merchandise, monthly giveaways, ticket giveaways, Club Blue merch, and more. Subscribe today at www.clubblue.nil. You get to pick which sport you want to support when you sign up. Choose your sport and support with Club Blue. Sean, there was a good quote that Pope gave tonight talking about just like what is the response, like how do you come back from something like this at this stage with the break coming up, SEC play right behind, and he said there are always moments where they're just galvanizing moments. The championships teams have those moments for sure, whether they show up in practice or in a game or wherever they show up, because you overcame something exceptional in a moment or you failed to do it. There's just a series of galvanizing moments, and what championships teams do is whatever they have as they go along, the story is still being written. That's what you do throughout the course of the game, the season. You keep writing and you keep writing and you keep writing. This won't be our last difficult moment that we have this season for sure. The question is, where does it take us? I like that quote, and he said it several times throughout the night that he was devastated, that he just it's been eating away at him, that he lost sleep over it, and that's what you want. You want to hear that messaging from your coach. Part of the frustration that we had with Coach Cal was something like this would happen. Tennessee in the SEC tournament, he immediately goes up the podium and says, "I get to get back to my house and be with my dogs." That's not what you want your coach to. You want to hear from the leadership of, hey, we're hurting. Tell us that you're hurting with us. We just want you to experience the pain that we're feeling, have somebody that cares the same way that we do. That was Cal's biggest downfall there at the end, and that's why Pope kind of had to hit the right buttons with this, because this was the first pain that Kentucky fans have felt since he's taken the job. So I like that he kind of just guided this back and kind of pushed the storyline back to it's a story. It's a long book that is still being written, where there have been good chapters and there have been bad chapters, and there's going to be good and bad chapters moving forward before we get to the end of the season that hopefully is a fairy tale ending. He still referred to this team as a championship team that they have to figure out how to galvanize somehow from this game. He said sometimes it's a good return, sometimes it's a bad return, but he's expecting the good. I do love that type of response is what the fan base needed to hear.
Yeah, and he's also in that looking ahead to the SEC and knowing there's going to be more trials, right? That.
And accepting that is a good thing.
It is.
You want to hear that, it's not going to be this is the first, but it ain't going to be the last.
This won't be our last time sitting here kind of questioning where this team is and what happened, in a sense, because this league is going to devour you. Not just Kentucky. It's going to devour the top. I'm telling you, Auburn as good as they are, Tennessee as good as they are, they're going to have nights where you're going to look up on that bottom line at ESPN and you're going to say, what? They lost where? They lost when? And it's going to be on the heels of something good happening to these teams. That's just the way the league is going to go.
Tennessee beat Middle Tennessee State, 9-4 Tennessee State, 82-64 tonight.
I mean, and if you're Pope, the way Kentucky's been playing, you mentioned the Western Kentucky game and kind of how they exposed some things, in that game for Kentucky, and the success that Kentucky had to that point. It was a new brand. It was a new system in a new place. The system at BYU, a lot of things are similar, but when it got to Kentucky, it took some time for people to get film, kind of take an approach for how they want to play Kentucky. Now you've got a good pool of data here, and you've got a good pool of film to use the same way you do on these other teams. Scouts get better as the season goes along. Now, from Kentucky's standpoint, Jack, I'm sure when Mark Pope turns on the tape, some of the things that exposed them against Ohio State that kind of cost them the game in the moment, I'm willing to bet there were warning signs within that office and film room 2 or 3 games before this one, and it just got you now. Like digging the hole against Gonzaga, they made a great adjustment, went to the zone, right? Ball screen defense was not good playing drop coverage in that game. You make an adjustment, you win the game, it works out in your favor. You get to Ohio State, your defense isn't good in ball screen coverage, you're not making shots. Like it puts you in a situation where you're not able to come and dig out of that hole. And Gonzaga's a better team than Ohio State. I fully believe Kentucky beat the better team of the two. It lost to the team that's not as good, but Ohio State, that was their day. It was their moment. We talked about not having the fan base there and it being the college football playoff, how it was going to play in Kentucky's favor. It just felt like that game still crazy that they've not had success against Ohio State in this classic.
That's 3, man. What the hell?
And all of them have been like, ugh, like when you look at it. Games. You beat North Carolina, you have success against them in this event, but you can't beat Ohio State. It's a weird weekend where it is every single year this close to the holiday, but Kentucky has things that it has to get fixed. It has to get right, or it's going to be exposed in SEC play. And Mark Pope, I'm sure, will go to the drawing board and figure out what it is and try to put his team there. The lack of athleticism as a team, I think that's something that's just going to continually be a thing that we're going to just have to accept this season. I think that when you're talking roster 1 to roster 2 and definitely roster 3, the athleticism increase is what's going to be the biggest thing that I think is noticeably changed within this program. I still like this team. They're 10th in the AP poll. If you'd have told me that going into Christmas that they'd be 10th in the AP poll, I would have taken it every single time at where they stand. Just don't like that it was a 20-point loss to Ohio State, where I don't think that Kentucky, one, had its best effort, not just shooting the ball, but just its effort and kind of its desire to be successful. That's the concerning part. But you're going to have this in a long season.
This was an interesting quote from Pope talking about the defense. Said that there, some of it was for he was to blame, some was on the players. Said that it was kind of a all systems failure on the defensive side, but there was one part that kind of sat. I don't know. It was weird to me. Said you're very much surprised that the issue actually arose, and it's probably a bunch of stuff. It's a little bit personnel. It's a little bit getting extended. It's a little bit maybe being distracted by other things, maybe some foul issues, but that clearly ball screens were an issue for us throughout the night. Bruce Thornton was a major issue for us for sure. Hey, dog, by the way, if that dude becomes available in the portal, I want Bruce Thornton. That dude is a freaking dog. I love that. In fact, the perfect guy that we've been talking about, like, hey, who would be a good complementary fit alongside of Caden Lewis and Jasper Johnson? A tough, gritty, kind of bowling ball, get downhill, get paint touch, like perfect guy is Bruce Thornton. So, hey, Bruce, if you're listening, Kentucky's not allowed to tamper, but I will. I will cheat to get you in a Kentucky basketball uniform. Mark my words. But said, and so those are two things that we're trying to address personnel-wise, dedication-wise, this game-wise. We just have to come up with the right answers in the right amount of time. Distraction, effort, intensity. He saw those things. He recognized those in real time. You get Colin Chandler engaged today, leaving the trip. You get so much about just that trip in that goes into it. You go up a couple days early to go see a play. They're exploring the city. It's New York, man. Like it's easy to get distracted and get lost in the city. Home Alone, shout out Home Alone, Lost in New York. But I think he kind of recognized that after the fact. He said that we just couldn't find the energy for this game. We couldn't, and I wonder how much of that had to do. And I didn't think that Pope thought that until for the first time tonight. He said that maybe being distracted by other things. That's the only real thing that you could think about, that you just kind of get lost in the event. The time ahead of Christmas, it's like, hey, we got family in town. Kobe Bryant living there. Ansley Almanor living there. Just go down the list. There's so many connections. Every player had their entire families in town, and leaving immediately to go back home to see family. Like It's just a weird time. I think Nick Roush found a stat that we're just like, can't win a game right before Christmas, this Kentucky basketball program in recent years, to save their life. I don't know what it is, why that is, but they just have. They just have not been able to win that game right before Christmas. So a lot kind of went into that, but you just kind of thought that this one would be different. Again, like going back to what I said to start the show, Pope had this game circled for so long. It was the one that, it wasn't Duke, it wasn't Gonzaga, it wasn't any of these, Auburn, Alabama, Arkansas, any of these. It was this one. And to have the team fall just flat in general, it really, really is odd to me.
It is. And I'm going to, I guess the word that just continues to keep coming out of my mouth tonight is rhythm. And I'm going to lean back into if your volume is off what you think it should be and what you've established as your goal, and you're falling 10 to 12 to 13 attempts short of that a game, is that the defense taking you away from those, or is it yourself taking you away from those? And if Mark Pope's power play numbers are what they are, Jack, how many of those were maybe 3-point attempts that didn't get up on the rim because of a pass or a misread or bad timing? So there's your rhythm. A couple of other things that can disrupt your rhythm. Kerr's not playing right now. Obviously, rotation is a little bit different. Lamont was out for a stretch. That can disrupt your rhythm. That can disrupt your rotation. You've thrown Travis Perry in a couple of games. I think at one point we probably thought maybe he wasn't going to play for a stretch of play. Kerr didn't start the year. Like, all these things can disrupt your rhythm, but they're also hurdles that you have to clear, and every team in college basketball has to juggle this stuff. Injuries, foul trouble, guys not playing well. All of those things can disrupt rhythm. You just got to be able to kind of push through it and establish what you are. So, like, this seems to be a team to me, Jack, that to get to that volume, they got to be in sync. And I thought for the first 6, 7, 8 games of the year, just watching them play offensively, even guarding defensively in some of the more high-profile games, I thought that they were in sync with who they were. The identity maybe has been off a little bit for the last few games. And I still think that that's a rhythm-based thing that Mark Pope will have to figure out where he wants to go, one, rotation-wise, and two, what are the ways that they kind of fix some of the things they do defensively. If you're going to struggle defending ball screens, do you mix in a little bit more zone here and there? And if you do that, it's more about timing and how you mix it, because that plays into your rhythm for a 40-minute game as well. So I trust Pope. I've seen enough in crucial moments this year that he's put this team in situations to win basketball games. This was the first time where you look at Kentucky and you go, what are you doing? Even the Clemson loss, you knew late they just didn't make shots to get over the hump. They got the stops. This one, they didn't get stops. They didn't make shots. It was a lot of things that played into the outcome of this one. This is the first one where it's a real stinker that you look at.
We'll talk about what's next and just kind of how you do respond from something like this when you have the break coming up and a really good learning lesson here to kind of regroup and let it marinate a little bit. You like to be able to play sooner rather than later to get the bad taste out of your mouth, but there also is kind of a beauty in letting that stink kind of linger a little bit and have to sit in it and let it marinate a little bit to kind of dig the pain a little bit deeper. We've
had a lot of crap and stink talk on this one, haven't we?
Hey, it's New York's always on my mind, baby. Also on my mind all the time. WonderFan. We are always excited to talk about our new sponsoring partner, WonderFan. WonderFan is a first-of-its-kind basketball arena rewards app where fans earn real rewards simply by cheering for their favorite team. And it doesn't even have to do with whether you're standing or sitting. All you need to do is head to the app store to download the app, check in once you're at the game, and let your earnings grow. It's that easy. During each game you are attending, you'll earn in the background once you press start. Once you have enough earnings, you can redeem gift cards to your different favorite brands like Fanatics, Dick's, Lululemon, StubHub, Home Depot, and many more. There's even ticket giveaways and fun contests. You can use your points to enter. New rewards are added weekly. Right now, users will get 50 free Wonder just for signing up. That'll score you a $10 off Fanatics code and a chance to win tickets to the national championship game. Plus, we have a special deal for listeners on the show. After signing up, head to your profile page and redeem code KSR for an additional 40 free Wonder. Again, that's code KSR. Head to the App Store, search WonderFan. That is WUNDERFAN, and start being paid for your fan loyalty. WonderFan, it pays to be a fan. Sean, we talked about some of these numbers dropping Ken Palm, Ned, where need some momentum, need another kind of pushback, get regroup, get reset a little bit, because after this Brown game, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a really, really tough go at it. Kentucky drops to 19 in the net, and then you have Brown, who is 151 right now in the net. Then you have Florida, at Georgia, at Mississippi State, then at home against Texas A&M, then Alabama. That's a run of 5 straight SEC games with top 30 teams in the net. How do you kind of move past this sluggish into the non-conference schedule and kind of get back rolling the way they were to start the year to begin SEC play?
I mean, to me, it's just the next game mentality. And I think that's the approach you got to take. You have to learn from the moment that you just had in New York City, and then you throw it away. You just trash it. And you go on to the next one. And that is going to be, to me, the perfect thing about when you get into league play, because you're going to have nights where you can't get caught feeling too good about yourself in this league this year. Because if you do, you'll follow it with a 2 or 3 game losing streak. I'm telling you. You'll have success one week and go 2-0, and then you'll look up and you'll be talking about, man, we just lost 2 in a row. You got to find a way to me, it's a 24-hour mindset here. You win a game, you feel great that night. When you wake up the next day, you got to forget about it. And with this one, having the layoff to get to this next non-conference game, Jack, I'm okay with it, because this one I want to sit just a little bit longer, but because I want it to fuel their preparation for the beginning of the rest of the season. We get into that back half of the year and into 2025 here. This one you want to sit because it's a lesson that you got to learn. And as a team, this is the first real one where they've had to probably look across the room at each other and be like, okay, what are we doing? Why did we get beat as badly as we did and exposed the way we did against a team that I think a lot of people thought Kentucky was significantly better than? So to me, it's a next game mentality, but this one needs to sit just a little bit longer, and Mark Pope's probably okay with it in that frame. Now, you get in the league, man, you got to have a short memory, good and bad, because if not, it'll consume you. And I think that a lot of teams are going to get, as I said earlier, devoured, and the teams that can kind of have that success in pockets are going to be the teams that are going to have the best chance, I think, to finish in the top half of this league. But this one just got to be a lesson that you take from film. You take the film to the court, and then you move on.
How does shooting get fixed? How is that something that, we had this mindset, right, where we talked so often throughout the early part of the year where this team has a chance to, on any given night, go hit 23s and just win by 50. This team has that, but it's impossible to get there if you're only taking 21 of them. So how do you get back? With that such a clear point of emphasis for this team going into this break, what will the response be there? How do you kind of get back to the 30, 35 number that you're looking for in terms of volume, and then hope that, you hit 15 to 20 in the next SEC couple games?
The thing I always say in coaching to our kids is don't get bored with the details. And the only reason I'm saying that now is because don't get bored with me repeating the same thing, that it's rhythm. And to me, Jack, it's rhythm. When Kentucky was playing well early in the season, was it not fun to watch the ball zipping and moving? And they were in sync and they were in rhythm. Their cuts were great. Right now, they've kind of hit a wall. They're not making shots. And does that mentally carry over to all areas of your game? If you're not shooting the ball at the clip that you expect yourself to, is it forcing you or making you let up defensively? Or you're not engaged because you're emotional about your foul trouble situations? Like, you got to handle emotions, rhythm. I feel like when I watched that game and I've watched Kentucky play, the rhythm has been off more than it's been on. And I'm telling you, when it comes down to power play numbers, and when you look at those, if you can go back and I guarantee you, if you can go back and look at those power plays, how many of them were late delivered passes or where maybe they didn't get to that power play because they didn't make the right read or the ball didn't leave your hands on time. Like
Hey,
all those things can disrupt. If you're a team that this is a team that doesn't have a lot of guys that can create its own shot, right? The ball movement cuts have to create those opportunities, the screening. If the rhythm is off, Jack, you're not getting those same looks and you're not getting in rhythm threes. And I think that might be something. Now, they've missed some open looks too. But the volume part of that, I think, has a lot to do with not being in sync and in rhythm with it. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the focus here over the next week, is trying to reestablish what that is and finding out how to get those similar looks that they were getting.
We spent a whole show, our film breakdown over the summer talking specifically about power plays for 30 minutes at one point, but just as a refresher, because this is the first time that we're hearing Pope use that verbiage and talk about it as a downfall of this team right now. So just kind of explain that to our listeners, just kind of the concept of what Pope is talking about whenever he says Kentucky goes 5 for 23 on power plays.
So obviously, a Mark Pope power play is making 2 guard 1, right? Whether that be some action that's a ball screen or it's a cut where you draw help. And then where's the ball getting delivered after you draw that second defender? If it's off the bounce and somebody helps, where's the ball going? Is it to the rim for a lob, or is it to a guy for a 3, or is it a back cut? Those passes have to be on time and on target, Jack. So those situations when you're talking about 5 for 23, 5 for 24, whatever they were in power plays, that doesn't necessarily mean that a shot got up on the rim and it was a miss. That could mean that you had one and you didn't see it, or you had one and the pass was off. Like those are probably chalked up as, man, you earned a power play, but you didn't complete it. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a missed shot in that sense. So that's where I'm kind of interpreting what Mark Pope is talking about there. And like I said, I need to go back and kind of probably dive in and digest the film a little deeper and maybe identify what these power plays were in this game. And a lot of it, like I said, is the ball not moving at the rate that it was moving early in the season? Are guys not cutting and finishing cuts at the rate? We talk all the time about sacrificing yourself as a cutter. That first cut creates an opportunity for a second guy to get a shot. Now, this is where I think scouting reports and game plans come into play, and this is going to be the hurdle Kentucky has to clear in league play. There are really good teams in this league. There are really good coaches. This is not an over-athletic Kentucky team, Jack. That's why the system has to be strong in who they are, and they got to be in rhythm with it. And if they're not, to me, the defensive issues worry me more, because I do think that this team is going to continue to be efficient offensively as a whole. They're going to have their nights where they shoot it well, but they have to be sound-minded defensively. They got to rebound well, they got to defend, and they got to get stops. And I think that kind of connects you to what you do offensively. In this game, they didn't make shots, but they also didn't defend.
This comment really cracked me up. I want to go over my post-game schedule of what my weekend looked like, and we're taking our weekend. It really made me laugh. So the game ends at 8:00 ish after we got our start at basically 6:00 with the UCLA and UNC game running along. So we get done at 8. I get done with post game duty at 1 a.m. ish, 1:30 a.m. By the time I fall asleep, I get up at 3 a.m. My alarm is set at 3 a.m. for my flight at 7 a.m. because I have to get on the subway, do the whole getting to JFK from Midtown in New York. So ran on 1 hour of sleep, got to the airport, got flight from New York to Detroit. Second leg of the flight got delayed from Detroit to Louisville. So I don't get home until about 4:00 ish or so. So I'm running on 1 hour of sleep. family is in town for Christmas this week, so I have 95 Christmases to go on this weekend. So throughout this week, so I go home, take a 1 hour nap, go to dinner with my family in town, and then today more Christmassy stuff throughout the day to get me to the night shift, to get me to the Pope show and all that stuff for tonight's show. So I just love the idea of we're taking our weekend. It's like I didn't have a weekend. I never have weekends. So, but bless their heart. But we're rocking and rolling. I mean, look, how can you even take life seriously when you have Sean Smith and a Santa Claus hat on Source to Say?
And my weekend, I just went and looked. So since Thursday, I've watched 13 hours and 15 minutes of film. And it looks like this, with just scouting report on top. Well, you can't even see it because the light's so bright, but it's scouting report on top of scouting report. Because when you play in a tournament, and it's great prep, right? But when you play in the KOB and you play, like, obviously we divide our scouts up by staff. But when you play on Friday night, there's 2 other teams that you got to prep for because you don't know who you're playing the next day, win or lose. And you got to have a scout ready. So my weekend was hectic as well because it was you win, you feel good, and by 10 p.m. you're on a bus coming back, getting the other scout ready, presented to your team. Then you're doing a shoot around and walk through the next morning, and you're going and playing again. I love it.
That's what we're here for, baby.
It is.
This is our element. We're in the meat grinder of college basketball season and about to be the meat grinder of the SEC. We love it. It's gonna be a little. It's gonna be a little pause. It's gonna be a little break with Christmas. We got the next couple of days to kind of hit reset, just like the team is doing, and then we'll be back. After the Brown game, we'll what do you learn from a game like Brown, where last non-conference getting the bad taste out of your mouth against Ohio State, and then not letting one turn to 2 before SEC play like that? It really is kind of a tricky. You almost wish that you were going straight into SEC play, but you do kind of have this next sleepy opponent to wrap up the non-conference schedule.
Are you excited to play it? That's how I look at it. Does your energy match your opponent, or does it match the opportunity to get back on the floor and get it right? That's what I look at. That's my coaching angle to how I would view this. How do you respond to a little bit of adversity? Do you start cracking as a program, or do you kind of come together and get closer, and then you take it as an opportunity to get back on the floor? Don't play to your opponent. Play to your next 40 minutes. And that's the next 40 minutes you got. And coming off the game that you just had, it should look like the season opener where you're just rejuvenated, ready to get back out there. Because then you go into league play, and if you can't get up for the league this year, man, you really need to check your pulse.
Why are you doing? Yeah, why are you doing this if you can't get up for the SEC this year?
And I don't think that they're going to have a problem with that. I really don't. Like, yes, there's things that concern you, but I think when you look at this, Kentucky's going to play much better basketball in the next game, and I think starting league play. Mark Pope losing sleep over it, I fully believe that. Because what you want is you want to know that your head man cares. And he's probably not going to sleep well until they get an opportunity to get back on the floor and correct it. Correcting it in practice. Now, look, not everything is tied to having to do it in games. As a coach, I like the preparation almost. You have to love it as much as you love the moment where everybody has eyes on you as well. And to me, I enjoy practice time in 4 or 5 days of practice more so than I do playing 2 or 3 games in a short window. So as a coach, I would love this time to come up where you just practice, because that's where you really correct things. And then you go onto the game and you kind of see where you're at from there.
There was a caller in tonight for his show and said, are you going to install any more offense before the game, before the next game and during this break? And Pope was like, oh, yeah. Oh yeah. Like, this is right now, this is my time to shine. Like, this is my, let's kind of throw out some of the garbage that we've seen as of late, and let's really dig into the nuts and bolts of what we do really well, and double and triple and quadruple down on that and draw up some stuff. He's like, yeah, I mean, our offense is so read and react heavy that a lot of it is based on just the fundamental, the foundation of Zoom and things coming off of the branches that come off of that. But he's like, oh, but you better believe that we're drawing up some stuff here in the next couple next week or two.
I see we got another nacho discussion going on in the.
Yeah, what's the deal there? I feel like I'm missing something talking about nachos.
Yeah.
Oh, the caller last fan last time was talking about the nacho issue at Rep Arena, and that being the issue here as of late. Maybe that nachos aren't nachos without those jalapenos. Not the right comment, but hey, I'm producing on the fly here. Hey, we're sleep deprived. We are struggling. We're on the struggle bus going into this Christmas holiday. Let me tell you,
I am tired. I'm very tired. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very tired.
It is a lot, but guess what? We have our friends at Game Time on our side. The whole sit-stand debate thing, I feel like it ran its course and it went way too long anyway. But we will see kind of like just the aftermath of that. It'll be the first time at Rupp Arena since all that nonsense. So you want to be a part of that. You want to see what that looks like up in person. So if you're going to, make sure you don't just watch the games, be there with Game Time. You get the sound from the court, you get the feel of the court. Don't forget about the celebrity sightings, and that's not just Kentucky games, but all sports and events, including concerts and shows. Use Game Time and its new feature called Game Time Picks to make your life even easier, filtering out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. I got right here. Get in price $88 to get into that Brown game. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be there. Sean, I know you're kind of having that FOMO of wishing that you were able to go into that Brown game, but we love our friends at Game Time. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and more. All-in pricing, toggling these features shows the total up front and with no surprise fees at checkout, which is my personal favorite part of Game Time seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code KSR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code KSR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Sean,
I love that the nacho comments just hung out on the screen there.
I feel like Game Time's going to really appreciate that.
Big juicy.
There we go.
They went from 100 to 0 after COVID, by the way.
Oh, good grief! All right, Sean. What's on the week schedule for you this week? I know you're back home.
Yeah,
you're off, not off work. What do you got going on?
Yeah, I'm not going to think about basketball for 48 hours. As soon as we log off of here, I'm not thinking about basketball for 48 hours. I'm just going to spend time with family, enjoy a couple of days off, and then we actually get back at it Thursday morning, and then we play Friday in the White Gear Maggard Holiday Tournament at Lexington Catholic. So if you're in the area in Lexington, come out, because should be a good tournament.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Got a bunch of family in town, both in the coming days and then this next weekend. Got some family coming in from Cincinnati. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I can't wait. Love this time of year. I'm on Christmas maybe like 24 or something like that. I've been doing it since like November 1st. This is my thing. This is my this is what I live for right here. So I hope you enjoy it with your family. I hope all of our listeners enjoy this Christmas holiday or whatever holiday you celebrate. I hope you get to spend a lot of good time with your friends and loved ones, those closest to you. We appreciate all of you guys, obviously, and hope you nothing but the best. And we'll regroup. Team is regrouping right now. We're going to regroup a little bit, and we're going to come back bigger and better than stronger than ever as we wrap up the non-conference schedule and get things rolling with the absolute juggernaut of an SEC schedule. So as I'm producing on the fly, we're going to go bam. That's where you find your work, Sean. You read it off the screen for me because I pulled it up for you. Bam. At Coach S. Smith right there.
Don't forget that underscore.
Yeah, underscore is very important. At Jack Pilgrim KSR, go subscribe to KSR Plus. Got a bunch of great content there. Some Caleb Wilson buzz. Ooh, what's the latest there? We got to figure out what the latest buzz is on Caleb Wilson. All that is there for you covered. Got some recruiting news coming in the next couple of weeks as we transition into tail end of the regular season and into the following offseason where all hell will break loose, and we're going to be here for every little bit of it. So with that, Sean, if I can get this show wrapped up, dun 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 dun. There, bang. We'll see you next time.